The $2.3 million question. Back in April 2016, I spoke with representatives from the Department of Transport and Main Roads about bicycle access to the Port of Brisbane and the possibility of creating a connection to the Moreton Bay Cycleway using the old Wynnum North Road. That would give cyclists an opportunity to avoid the really unfriendly stretch of Pritchard Street between the railway crossing and the roundabout at the intersection of Wynnum North Road and Tingle Road. That stretch of Pritchard Street has no shoulder and carries a lot of high-speed traffic, including trucks. There is also a railway crossing where the tracks cross the road at a 45-degree angle, which creates something of a hazard for cyclists. A new connection could utilise the 800 metres or so of existing bikeway along the northern side of the Port of Brisbane motorway. Confusingly, the cul-de-sac where that starts is the end of Pritchard Street, but north of the Port motorway. The Moreton Bay Cycleway starts at the car park at the end of Wynnum North Road and heads south from there. There's a disused section of Wynnum North Road that can be converted to a bikeway quickly, easily and cheaply. There's also an existing underpass under Port Drive, which would provide the necessary crossing and connect up to a bikeway on the other side. However, it would still be necessary for the bikeway to cross the railway line, either over, under, or with a level crossing. That's not exactly impossible. After all, there are examples of each of those types of crossings in other parts of Brisbane already. Obviously it wouldn't be cheap though, so including it in another major project would make sense. That's why I was excited to get a reply back from the Department of Transport and Main Roads in June 2016, advising that the Port of Brisbane Proprietary Limited had just announced that they would upgrade the Port Drive, and that the project would include an extension to the bikeway. They also assured me that the Port of Brisbane was consulting with Brisbane City Council and the Department of Transport and Main Roads about connecting the planned bikeway extension into the existing cycleway network. Good news, or so I thought. Sure enough, there was soon a public announcement and photo opportunity with the Minister for Main Roads, Road Safety and Ports, the Honourable Mark Bailey MP, and with the local member for Lytton, Joan Peace MP. There wasn't much detail available at that stage, but I could see from the map that it did indeed include a separated cycleway shown in green. Great, but what about those connections? Well, of course, nothing's going to happen unless there's funding set aside for it, so the next big test was the budget. Sure enough, the state government listed $2.3 million over 2 years to construct cycleways on Pritchard Street and Wynnum North Road. Brisbane City Council's 2016-17 budget included around $800,000 for projects which looked like they might be about connecting the bikeways. 8 months after work had commenced on the Port of Brisbane motorway upgrade, in February 2017, I finally received official confirmation that despite all the talk about connections, there was not going to be a bikeway connection under the Port of Brisbane motorway. In fact, the project's February newsletter showed the wildlife tunnel that had been created at what they referred to as Ampole Bridge. The person I spoke to on the phone confirmed that there would be no bikeway underpass. Obviously that's pretty disappointing, as it effectively rules out a connection to the Moreton Bay Cycleway for the life of the motorway, and that could be 50 years or more. Even if the rail line is replaced in that time, which is apparently under consideration by Infrastructure Australia, there is no way of connecting the bikeway across the motorway, or at least no way that wouldn't be unreasonably expensive. So there you go, opportunity lost. But it gets even more disappointing. Recall the millions set aside by Council and TMR for those bikeway connections. Well, later in February 2017, Brisbane City Council announced their plans for the Moreton Bay Cycleway at Wynnum. This project will be jointly funded by Council and the Queensland State Government. Recall that there was not enough money to create the yellow link, because that would have involved a railway crossing. Instead, they will be building the bikeway shown in pink, even though that will also involve a railway crossing. And rather than being perpendicular to the tracks, this one is pretty much guaranteed to be at an angle of 45 degrees. If you've ever ridden a bicycle across railway tracks, particularly on a wet day, you will understand just how treacherous that can be. And let's take a look at the timing of this project. In the 2016-17 financial year, Council intends to progress stages 1 and 2. The alignment for stage 3 is yet to be determined. And you'll recall from the beginning of this presentation that it is stage 3, that section of Pritchard Street between the railway line and Wynnum North Road, that is the problem. That is the stretch which is dangerous and uncomfortable even for the experienced cyclist. If for some reason stage 3 does not go ahead, there's really no value in building stages 1 and 2 at all. Personally, I might be more confident that Council would proceed with stage 3 next year if I wasn't aware of a number of other similar projects which have been cancelled or delayed for years. Also, if you take a closer look at stage 1, you'll see it involves building a 3-metre wide shared path along the side of Wynnum North Road, between the roundabout and the car park at Eleanora Park. That section of Wynnum North Road services less than 30 residences. It is almost the last street in Brisbane that would require a separated cycleway. There's also every chance that Council will build the separated path such that it climbs up over the bank you see here on the right, while the road has a much more gentle gradient. Given that, there's every chance that no one will use the 3-metre shared concrete path, preferring the gentler, smoother climb on the road. As for stage 2, along Pritchard Street, Council have stated that an off-road separated bikeway there will provide safety benefits for commuter and recreational cyclists as well as for motorists. However, that path delivers cyclists to the intersection at Export Street, where they then have to cross 2 high-speed slip lanes leading to and from the motorway. It's an industrial area, and given the proximity to the port, a lot of the traffic through that intersection consists of container trucks. This is simply not infrastructure that is designed for cyclists of all ages and abilities. In relation to this project, Brisbane City Council have stated that the key objective of the Moreton Bay Cycleway is to provide commuter and recreational cyclists of all abilities with safer and more accessible and connected bikeway facilities. Frankly, it fails that objective. By the end of 2018, if everything goes to plan, we will have 2 new bikeways that run parallel to each other and which both fail to connect in a useful way. And we will have spent $2.3 million of ratepayers' and taxpayers' money to get it. That's incredibly disappointing. I made this video to explain what's wrong with this bikeway, even though it supposedly aligns with the Principal Cycle Network plan. I hope that's now clearer. I'm Belle on Wheels, and this video was brought to you by Eastbug and Space for Cycling Brisbane.